What if everything you built, your career, family, and future, was taken from you in a single night? What if success wasn't enough to protect you from injustice? Keep watching to witness one man's resilience and his fight to return home. One night, he was pulled over, and everything changed. Patrick Brown adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror of his metallic blue Jaguar XJ. The dashboard cast a soft amber glow as the city lights danced across the windscreen. He had just finalized his firm's biggest contract to date, a multi-million-pound property deal in the heart of London. After decades of hard work, setbacks, and relentless ambition, Patrick was finally where he had always believed he belonged. His phone buzzed with a message on the passenger seat. "Eva, celebration dinner's ready. The kids are waiting for you. Love you." He smiled. Eva, his wife of 21 years, was the quiet strength behind all he had built. His daughter, Layla, would perform her dance of victory the moment he walked through the door. His teenage son, Jordan, would feign indifference, but Patrick knew his eyes shone with admiration. It was a good night, until the flashing blue lights lit up behind him. He sighed, checked his mirrors, and pulled over. As he wound down the window, he saw the officer approach with the stance he had come to recognize. Tight shoulders, a squared jaw, hand too close to the belt. "Evening, sir," the officer said. "Is this your vehicle?" Raised an eyebrow. "It is. Is there a problem, officer? Can I see your license and registration?" Patrick handed them over without a word. A second officer approached, this one younger, visibly tense. "You fit the description of a suspect we're looking for. I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." Patrick stiffened. "What description is that? A black man in a suit driving a car he can afford." The younger officer's jaw clenched. "Step out of the car, sir." Patrick exhaled slowly, letting the frustration burn in his chest, not in his voice. He opened the door, movements calm, deliberate, hands visible, body language rehearsed. Still, the officer lunged forward, twisting one arm behind him before the other followed. The cuffs snapped closed with a practiced rhythm. "Too tight." Not resisting, Patrick muttered. "Just being careful," the officer replied, guiding him toward the patrol car. The air had shifted. The lights of passing cars seemed harsher now, too bright, as if exposing something shameful. Tires on the smooth tarmac sounded louder, more accusatory. The once quiet suburban street bristled with tension and quiet humiliation. Passers-by averted their gaze in silence. Curtains didn't twitch, but Patrick could feel the eyes behind them, watching, judging, disparaging him. His knees bent awkwardly as the officer pushed his head down. The cruiser's back seat was cramped and unforgiving, its hard plastic shell molded to force Patrick's spine into an unnatural curve, like it had been designed to remind him he didn't belong there. The door shut with a clunk like a verdict. The suit he'd worn for the client meeting was rumpled now, wrinkled and sweating under the weight of the day. He stared ahead, through the thick metal mesh that partitioned him from the front. The officer slid into the driver's seat. The car started. No one said a word. Patrick's jaw clenched. He fought against the rising heat behind his eyes. He had done everything right. The car was his. The plates were clean. No signals were run. No taillight was out. Nothing to pull him over for. Not really. Didn't matter. He let his head rest back against the window, felt the vibrations of the road. Somewhere ahead, a precinct waited. But all Patrick could think of was his father's voice, years ago. "Don't give them a reason. Sometimes, son, being black is the reason." He closed his eyes and waited. Minutes passed, though time had lost meaning, stretched thin by humiliation. The cruiser pulled into the station. Its slow stop jolting Patrick back into his body. Hands gripped him, lifting him out like cargo. Inside, the world blurred. Fluorescent lights, clipped commands, the snap of latex gloves. He moved because they moved him. Fingerprints, questions, silence. then cold steel and concrete. A cell. The door slammed shut behind him, echoing like the end of something. He stood still, untethered, not quite in the world, not quite out of it. The holding cell was fluorescent lit and soulless. 12 hours later, an immigration official approached. "Mr. Brown," the woman said, flipping through a folder. "There appears to be an issue with your immigration status. We're transferring you to a detention center until it's resolved." He stared at her. "What the hell are you talking about? I've lived in this country for over 50 years. We don't have a naturalization record. No British passport application. It appears you may be undocumented. My parents brought me here from Jamaica in 1960. I was 6. I went to school in Wembley. I have a national insurance number. I'm a British citizen. Do you have documentation proving that?" "Your government does," he snapped. "That is, if they haven't already burned the records." Patrick didn't know how long the process would take. At first, there was hope. Letters exchanged, documents submitted, court dates scheduled. But days turned to weeks. Then came silence. And finally, the unimaginable. Despite public protests, legal petitions, and desperate intervention from his solicitor, the decision was final. Patrick was deported. He was flown to Kingston, Jamaica, with nothing more than a small bag and a hollowed sense of self. The land he hadn't seen in decades now felt like a foreign country. Back in the UK, his wife and children were shattered. The absence wasn't just emotional. It was physical, psychological, and financial. His assets were seized. The house grew cold. His wife slipped into depression, carrying the weight of their broken family alone. Their children, once full of laughter, grew quiet. A man had been removed, but an entire family had been disrupted. Patrick landed in a country he hadn't seen since he was a toddler. He had no family contact, no shelter, no plan, and only vague recollections of the island his parents once called home. The humid air, the scent of cannabis and diesel, the buzz of patois, none of it felt familiar. At first, he stayed in a cheap Airbnb, bare walls, a thin mattress, and silence that felt louder than the streets outside. Once a man of money and stability, Patrick now lived in quiet destitution. When the money ran out, so did the roof over his head. He survived on foraged fruits, cheap street food, and the mercy of crowded shelters or half-finished buildings with no doors. People called him deportee with a tone soaked in contempt. He was a stranger in the land of his birth, a man without roots, without rights, an exile in plain sight. He felt invisible and yet watched, unwanted. The days bled into weeks, the weeks into months, and slowly, the memory of home began to feel like a dream he was being punished for having. Then a break in the storm. One humid afternoon, in the bustle of a market square, an elderly woman approached him with eyes narrowed against the sun. "You, Patrick Brown?" she asked, squinting. "Glorious boy." He froze, the name hitting like thunder. He nodded slowly, cautiously. She stepped closer and took his hand, her grip warm, sure. "I knew your mother from back in the day," she said, voice thick with memory. "She was my sister's best friend. You've got the family in your face. You can't hide that." Patrick froze, disbelief flickering in his eyes. Pearl had recognized him. After all this time, after the erasure, the silence, the drifting, someone finally saw him. Someone knew who he was. The weight of isolation cracked, just enough for breath to return. His voice trembled as he spoke, low and uneven, the words spilling out like something long damned. He told Pearl his story, not all of it, not yet, but enough. Enough for her to hear the ache behind each sentence, the quiet devastation in every pause. She didn't interrupt. She just held his hand a little tighter. "I don't know anyone here," he whispered, months of loneliness packed into those few words. Pearl didn't hesitate. Her eyes burned with determination. Your people are still in Clarendon, she said, her voice sharp with purpose. You're coming with me. Later that afternoon, Patrick sat in the back seat of Pearl's husband's car as it rumbled gently along winding country roads. They left the bustle of the seaside behind, trading salt air for lush greenery and quiet hills. The cool, clean breeze drifted through the open window. Fresh, earthy, alive. For the first time in months, Patrick felt something close to peace. The motion of the car, the rhythmic turns, the softness of the wind, all of it lulled him. His body, long, tense, and brittle, finally surrendered. He drifted into sleep, deep and untroubled. It was the best rest he'd had in a very long time. Pearl brought him to a modest home filled with warmth and voices that carried echoes of his mother's. His distant cousins, some he had never met, and others he had long forgotten, welcomed him like a prodigal son. They fed him, gave him a room, and called him family. He was touched. Their kindness gave him strength in the weeks that followed, even as he wrestled with the pain of abandonment and the sense of exile from the life he had built. At night, he sat on the veranda, staring at the stars, wondering how a man could be uprooted so thoroughly from the soil he had sown himself into. Meanwhile, Kamala Shaw, working tirelessly back in London, gathered records, school testimonies, and statements from former employers who remembered Patrick as a boy, sweeping construction sites and sketching blueprints in the margins of all notebooks. She worked meticulously to prove what should never have been in question, that Patrick had been ordinarily resident in the UK since before 1973, as a citizen of the United Kingdom and colonies, a status granted before the British Nationality Act of 1983. He had been granted indefinite leave to remain. The government had failed to document it. Kamala was determined to make sure they didn't forget it. The press picked up the story. Outrage spread. Eventually, the judicial review was granted. The courtroom back in London was packed. Journalists, legal observers, and even MPs who had grown tired of the Windrush injustice. Kamala stood before the judge. My client was deported from the only home he ever knew. He has lived in the United Kingdom since he was 6 years old. The government's failure to retain proper documentation is not his fault. His deportation was not only unlawful, it was a national disgrace. The Home Office barrister tried to salvage their position. We acted in accordance with the available records at the time. Records your department destroyed, Kamala shot back. This is not just a case of negligence. It is systemic racial injustice. Finally, Patrick, appearing by video link, took the stand. I built a life in the UK, a career, a family. I was taken from all of it, dumped here like I was nothing. I'm not a stranger. I'm British. I was raised in Northwest London, studied at your universities, paid your taxes, and contributed to your economy. What was my crime? Success, while being black. He paused. My parents believed in this country. I did too. And despite everything, I still do. But belief isn't blind loyalty. It's a contract, and you broke it. The ruling came the next morning. Judge Patel adjusted her glasses. This court finds Mr. Brown's deportation unlawful. We order his immediate return and recommend full reparations under the Windrush compensation scheme. The state has failed him profoundly. He was flown back to the UK the following week. The first time he stepped off the plane at Heathrow, he wept. Eva and the kids met him at arrivals, and they stood there for minutes, just holding each other. Back at home, the door burst open. Layla launched into his arms. Daddy, you're home. Jordan, arms crossed, allowed a small smile. Told my friends you'd beat them in court. Eva took his hand. We missed you. Patrick gazed around his home, familiar, yet subtly changed. He walked to the dining table, where, on the night of his arrest, the meal sat, cold and untouched. Lowering himself into a chair, he closed his eyes and drew a long, steady breath. I miss me too, he said. Now let's eat. I'm finally starving. A month later, he stood in front of a panel, testifying to Parliament. "You want to fix this system?" he asked. "Then stop pretending it's broken. It was built this way. You want to change it? Start by listening. We're not ghosts. We're not paperwork. We're British, and we're not going anywhere." He sat down to applause, and for the first time in a long time, Patrick Brown felt seen. Outside reporters clamored for quotes. One asked, "Mr. Brown, what now?" Patrick paused, smiled slightly. "Now I live," he said, "and I'll make sure nobody else disappears." Later that night, while his wife slept soundly beside him, Patrick lay still, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. Sleep evaded him. His thoughts drifted to his mother, Gloria, who had spent her life tending to the elderly, lifting bodies, easing pain, to keep food on the table. He thought of his father, the quiet, steadfast train driver who never lived to see his son cross the graduation stage, certificate in hand. An architect at last. Would they have believed this? Could the country they had served with dignity and hope turn on their son so swiftly and coldly? After decades of loyalty, there were no honors, no homecoming, only handcuffs, only silence. Moral of the story: a nation's failure to see the humanity in its people can erase lives, but resilience, truth, and solidarity can restore what injustice tries to take away. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Word, Sound, and Story, where Troy McKenzie brings real-life experiences to life through powerful, authentic storytelling.